What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoundHound. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and where I see things going. Before we get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So SoundHound has been consolidating ever since its nice spike on Tuesday. Interestingly enough, on social media, I see a lot of people's sentiment turning very bearish. So there hasn't really been all that much in news from SoundHound. So it's been largely just piggybacking off of the broader market. Tuesday, we did have that good news with Red Lobster, but like I said, it was rather short-lived. Powell's comments recently have been kind of making its waves through the broader market about just multiples being too high and so forth. And this upcoming week is going to be a very big deal for just the broader market because of what Powell recently stated. So in case you kind of missed it, he did say some hot topics, but he did signal that he was still concerned over some labor kind of data, right? So he's going to continue to monitor that. This upcoming week is riddled with a lot of big labor data points. So Monday, we have a lot of Fed speakers, so that in among itself could bring a lot of volatility. Tuesday, JOLT numbers, as well as consumer confidence. And then Wednesday, we have manufacturing data, as well as ADP employment. So manufacturing, the last couple data points, I think it was last week. So we had Richmond and also S&P. Both came in somewhat better than anticipated. So in this case, forecast right now is 49. Anything above 50 shows more of a expansion. Anything below 50 shows more of a contraction. So that's going to be a key point to really watch for. And actually going back here for a second, so September the 30th, you should see some abnormal volume, even possibly on Monday, as that's the end of Q3. So you'll see some institutions rebalancing. And based on SoundHound's performance over the last 3 months, it's actually been very good, despite some people kind of thinking otherwise. So you might be seeing some institutions kind of trading it quite significantly just to rebalance. So again, anticipate some volatility for that. Thursday, we have initial jobless claims as well as challenger job cuts, and a lot of Fed speakers on a side note throughout the whole week. But Friday, we have non-farm payroll and unemployment. So a lot of big data points that could really hit home to what Powell kind of mentioned. So let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. Specific to SoundHound, the only thing that they are doing is this. So between October the 2nd and 3rd, they're going to be at this. So Beyond Active Americas. I think a lot of these are okay, but I don't think they're good catalysts for kind of investors. This has kind of been my annoyance with SoundHound, is that they use social media more to kind of target customers rather than investors, but it is what it is. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Potentially, we do have Rezolve AI unveiling their earnings Wednesday before the market does open. So in their case, they are not doing the exact same as SoundHound, but a lot of people do compare the two. Even a lot of the fireside chats that Rezolve has recently participated in, they kind of give jabs at SoundHound, which is kind of comical if you ask me. But nonetheless, it goes to show that Rezolve sees at least SoundHound as inferior to them. And so again, I think potentially their earnings could maybe ripple through if there's some good catalysts that could really push SoundHound as well, piggyback off of that, or vice versa. If Rezolve has horrible earnings, that could signal more of a weakening in the broader sector. So that could again cause some volatility in SoundHound. Aside from that though, going into this upcoming week, 32.73% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 119 million shares overall being shorted. So all-time high short interest is around 35.25%. So insane that we are almost at 52-week highs for the short interest, but yet the stock price is still doing fairly okay. It's holding up. So definitely shorts will be fairly active. Cost to borrow minimum going into this upcoming week is negative. So that does mean that there is a broker or brokers out there physically paying people to short SoundHound. So there's some signs of manipulation. Looking at from a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be kind of around that $18 range. So a nice recovery is anticipated. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub 1450, with it closing exactly at 1594 on Friday. that does mean that the 1550 and below strike prices are in the money. So you don't really see that much in crazy walls. So you won't be seeing any gamma squeeze or anything like that. Looking forward into this upcoming week, we have a massive wall at 17. So best case scenario, if SoundHound's able to kind of gather itself and really push higher, if it's able to close above 17, that would be kind of best case scenario. But with it right now at 1594, it is trading between this R1 and the pivot. So I'm looking at the 1-day chart. So these are very strong support and resistance points. 1609 is going to be that key point to really get over early on in the week if you're going to see any sort of recovery. So 1609 and then 1782. Flip side, 1327 and then 1045. I don't see that S1 being touched. Potentially, dependent on how things play out, you could see maybe this pivot point possibly getting close to that level. That's, again, worst case scenario. If all the data points come in horrific, then obviously, yeah, it is what it is. But in my opinion, I do feel like there's a lot of consolidation that has occurred with SoundHound. So I think it's ready to kind of move higher from here. It did close on Friday below that 10-day moving average. So it does signal kind of a lack of momentum going on ever since, like I said, that nice spike on Tuesday that caused it to get to roughly around that like 1930 or 1940, wherever it was. Going into this upcoming week though, looking at the market position right here. So you see a lot of willing sellers right now and a little bit of a strong amount of willing buyers up until pretty much 1568. If it is, and actually conveniently, that was the low on Friday. So if it does break below that, then you could see some consolidation to kind of that low 15s for the most part. So as I've stated in the past, take your time over the weekend and research options. Any volatile stocks such as SoundHound, you can make some pretty good money. And even if you do want to dollar cost average buy the dip, I would recommend a lot of people to consider selling puts. This is something I love doing because it's either you get to buy the stock that you like at a price you want and also keep the premium, but it's a little bit of a way to get a better discount. But again, options aren't for everyone and whatever else. So in general, I think going into this upcoming week, things have gone quite south very fast, somewhat unjustified. And I think a lot of that is because of shorts really increasing despite SoundHound's volume somewhat dropping. So again, as I've explained in the past, whenever you have lower and lower volume, it's very easy to manipulate, especially SoundHound, very heavily shorted. They can pretty much do what they want with SoundHound. Aside from that, looking at stochastic RSI, because of the recent consolidation, it's caused it to break off of that overbought status to somewhat neutral. So if it does, let's say, touch that 1520 range or whatever else, like I mentioned, then that would be kind of fully resetting the technicals. So it is what it is. One thing to take note of though, SoundHound, there hasn't really been all that much in actual like articles coming out. Some bearish ones just saying like turbulence amid insider sales. All of the transactions on the side note have been for tax purposes, because if technically SoundHound was selling, you know, that's one of my pet peeves, because when I first started to cover SoundHound, you had a lot of individuals selling and it was transaction code S, not for tax purposes. And that really pissed me off because that was a crazy negative sentiment killer. And a lot of that conveniently was roughly around that $6 or $7 range. So a lot of those people, insiders that sold, were completely dumb. But at the same time, as I've mentioned in the past, SoundHound is also like whoever's doing their administrative stuff isn't the brightest, because they're also using the wrong codes when they are submitting the Form 4s. This is why a lot of these articles, which most likely aren't human kind of created, they're just AI, and AI is saying, hey, this Form 4 says transaction code S, so it is a straight up sell. Transactions for taxes are F. So SoundHound has always done wrong codings, so they're not necessarily the brightest when it comes down to that. But nonetheless, I think in general, this upcoming week, it has consolidated enough, so it might be ready to finally move on higher from here. So going back over here, I do feel realistically we should be close to this R2. Whether we break above it or not is going to come down to a lot of the data points, because again, Powell That's his big thing, is labor. So potentially, if the labor data comes in negative, you actually do want that a little bit, not extremely negative, but you want it just negative enough to justify cuts. So again, you might have the market starting to price in a 25 basis point cut for the upcoming October meeting. So let me know your thoughts on SoundHound. Where do you see things going? Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What's your kind of general thoughts on SoundHound? And then one final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades. Pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.